My entire existence was dedicated to the sacred art of the perfect starting role. Conquering the stat-obsessed Academy of Luck became my singular, all-consuming focus. Countless news reports blared warnings about the game's dangers, which I promptly ignored. With a casual flick of my wrist, I initiated one last emergency reset. Surely, after 10,000 attempts, the universe owed me a flawless run. A friend's exasperated voice once echoed in my ears, questioning my very sanity. She always insisted this digital obsession would somehow be my ultimate undoing. Laughing it off, I passionately defended my unyielding need for maximum DPS builds. Her challenge was simple. Would I even become a little girl for god-tier stats? My flippant yes apparently sealed a cosmic contract I never knew I signed. This time, the familiar jolt of a system reset felt terrifyingly, irreversibly permanent. Then, impossibly, a pair of tiny eyelids fluttered open to a world of blinding light. Consciousness returned to me in an opulent, unfamiliar bed, feeling alarmingly small. Golden sunlight streamed through a grand window, confirming I wasn't in the afterlife. Glancing down, I saw impossibly small, chubby hands where my own should be. A shimmering blue tutorial window materialized before my eyes, welcoming me to the academy. An arrow helpfully directed my attention toward a gift from my new father. The system's logic crashed down on me. I hadn't just reset the game, I'd entered it. Worse yet, my character build was locked to the one class I'd jokingly agreed to. My tiny fingers trembled as I reached for the heart-shaped box on the nightstand. Attached was a small, elegant card addressed to someone named Oknodi. That name pinged a distant, nagging memory in the back of my mind. Suddenly, a horrifyingly cringy memory resurfaced with crystal clarity. My personal gaming mantra, "Okay, I won't die," had just become my legal name. Now I was permanently logged into the luck-based hellscape I knew so intimately. Perhaps, I mused, a world ruled by RNG was better than one ruled by brute force. Victory here demanded not just strength or smarts, but the favor of the dice gods. I recalled how the only way to truly control fate was to spam the reroll button. Frantically, my mind screamed for a status window, a menu, anything to escape. Absolutely nothing happened. This cruel new reality had no escape key. For a fleeting moment, I mourned my glorious muscle-bound berserker builds. My own boastful words about stats had come back to bite me in the tiniest way possible. Surely this all had to be some kind of elaborate, cosmically unfunny prank. Then my eyes landed on the small pouch on the floor, the starting allowance. This was undeniably the game's opening cutscene, and I was its unwilling star player. The first major RNG check was coming up, my father's randomly assigned profession. His job would determine my entire playthrough, leading to a golden path or a guaranteed bad end. Failing out of this academy wasn't just game over, it was a literal death sentence. Survival in this nightmare depended entirely on nailing this first crucial luck check. Clutching the pouch, I sent a desperate prayer to the RNG gods for anything but the dreaded orphan route. Its surprising weight nearly toppled my tiny frame. Peeking inside revealed a staggering cascade of glittering gold. A system window blazed to life, confirming my noble lineage. My destiny was now set on the coveted golden route to victory. Feeling invincible, my attention snapped back to the heart-shaped box. Within its velvet lining rested a breathtakingly ornate artifact. Something else lay tucked beneath the delicate accessory. Unbelievably, the game had given me 2 starting items instead of 1. The first was a crisp, formal letter detailing the Academy's entrance exam. Its message was brutally short and devoid of any warmth. There was absolutely no hint of fatherly affection in the cold, precise script. Frankly, a pouch full of gold was a much better welcome gift than empty sentiment. This absent benefactor might just be the perfect support character for my playthrough. My focus could remain on stats and loot without tedious family bonding quests. Such a perfectly distant relationship was a min-maxer's dream come true. Now for the real prize, the mysterious second item. My jaw practically unhinged at the sight of an ultra-rare S-rank network item. This legendary artifact could summon a personal NPC butler to manage my inventory. Suddenly, a magnificent gilded door materialized from thin air in the center of the room. Out from the impossible doorway stepped a man in a perfectly tailored suit. His voice, a low and cultured baritone, respectfully asked if I had called. He presented a small silver whistle as the key to summoning his services. A triumphant smirk spread across my face. This world was already bending to my will. Putting the whistle to my lips, I gave a test blow and he instantly reappeared. I demanded his name, noting his impeccable appearance hid something unsettling. He introduced himself as Jonah Waihemi, though his aura screamed less butler and more mafia enforcer. A closer look at his embroidered name tag sent a jolt of pure dread through me. That name was a terrible on-the-nose pun translating to Jonah is super dangerous. This game's cruel humor had just reached an entirely new level of personal attack. My mind reeled as I masked my internal screaming with a desperate request for a mirror. Trying to appear calm, I reminded myself that my own name was a literal good luck charm. Still, trusting a man literally named Super Dangerous felt like a critical gameplay error. His hand then moved slowly, deliberately toward the inside of his tailored coat. A blinding flash of polished silver erupted from the darkness of his jacket. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for a game over I wouldn't be walking away from. He was only holding a beautifully crafted, ornate hand mirror. My cheeks burned with embarrassment as I awkwardly accepted the offered item. Tentatively, my trembling fingers brought the reflective surface up to my face. His piercing golden eyes watched my every move with unnerving intensity. Reflected back at me was the face of a small, impossibly pretty girl with wide, sapphire blue eyes. My lips formed a question about my apparent youth, a detail too bizarre to ignore. Jonah swiftly interrupted, announcing my master's decree that I enter the academy. Utterly baffled, I questioned if Papa was this supposed master, a title he didn't seem to recognize. He clarified instead that my benefactor had arranged intensive training for the entrance examination. These new training grounds, he added, were a vast improvement over this neglected, dusty chamber. Only then did my gaze sweep across the room, registering the stark reality of my lodgings. A flicker of something dangerously close to pity softened the butler's stoic features. Quickly I waved a dismissive hand, attempting to project an air of unbothered confidence. His resolve only hardened, however, as he pledged unwavering service to his pitiful new charge. Following him towards a colossal training hall, I recalled this game's tutorial was anything but simple. Behind him, my mind raced to process the bizarre turn of events. Vivid memories surfaced of the game's notoriously brutal entrance exam, a graveyard for aspiring players. An astronomical 90% of newcomers, myself included, had wiped on their very first mission. Even the bitter sting of a full party betrayal felt fresh in my memory. This opulent training facility, by comparison, felt like an absolute cakewalk. Some casual mention of the grounds being prepared every year was followed by his sudden, nervous twitch. Before I could question his slip, a wave of panic hit me as I realized the ornate mirror was gone. Immediately, he gestured towards an adjacent room, assuring me a new one was already prepared. That face wore the exact expression of a professional cleaner trying to hide a very big mistake. Stepping inside, my eyes landed on a magnificent full-length mirror dominating the wall. My own tiny reflection stared back as I attempted to flex a bicep that simply wasn't there. There was nothing but a scrawny child with limbs like twigs and zero muscle definition. So small was my face that it could be completely obscured by one of my doll-like hands. Pure disappointment escaped me in a sigh as I turned back towards the stoic butler. His deadpan question about my familiarity with mirrors caught me completely off guard. Any attempt to play it cool failed spectacularly under his gaze, which registered my genuine shock. Changing the subject, he suggested we eat first, a proposal that short-circuited my internal panic. All thoughts of my pathetic stats vanished at the glorious, beautiful mention of food. Without another word, I practically skipped towards the dining hall, leaving him watching in my wake. Perhaps he assumed I was just a hungry child, completely unaware of my true objective. This very world operated on game logic, and its collection system offered permanent stat boosts. Discovering new recipes, I knew, was one of the fastest and easiest ways to power level early on. The butler's promise to bring the meal shortly had me vibrating with anticipation for my first easy stat points. While waiting, a crucial thought struck me. Every single second before the exam was grinding time. The vast, empty dining hall suddenly presented the perfect, unconventional training opportunity. Countering this world's brutal RNG meant grinding every possible skill, starting immediately. 1 full minute spent crouching beneath the dining table earned me a precious first point in the stealth skill. Such basic skills were the absolute key to surviving the ridiculously overpowered elite bosses later. Jonah's return coincided with my discovery of a much better hiding spot inside an empty supply barrel. Down he stared, his perfectly composed face a mask of utter bewilderment. Those intense golden eyes bored straight through my flimsy cover. Emerging with a flourish, I proclaimed my barrel hiding perfectly normal. My own traitorous stomach then roared, shattering any illusion of dignity. Jonah, ever unflappable, merely gestured towards a table groaning under the weight of an imperial feast. All thoughts of stealth evaporated, replaced by the dazzling promise of EXP points disguised as food. Without a moment's hesitation, I launched myself at the table in a whirlwind of tiny, grabbing hands. His perfectly neutral facade finally cracked, revealing a flicker of pure astonishment. Flavor was a luxury I couldn't afford when a stat-grinding opportunity this good presented itself. Just as predicted, a shimmering blue window appeared, confirming the collection bonus for every 10 unique dishes. This min-maxing strategy required volume, not delicacy, making speed my greatest ally. My mission to complete the cooking collection had officially begun, leaving my butler utterly perplexed. Fueled by a dozen stat-boosting pastries, I declared my immediate intention to begin strength training. Wiping crumbs from my face, the reality of this pay-to-win lifestyle hit me with full force. An eager demand to be led to the training grounds immediately followed my epiphany. Moments later, I stood before a sprawling outdoor track, somehow already clad in perfectly fitted athletic wear. Jonah's simple instruction was to run until my body gave out, a test of pure endurance. My tiny frame struck a comically heroic pose against the vastness of the field. A confident smirk played on my lips as I mentally prepared to push this new body to its absolute limit. Suddenly, a sharp electric jolt shot through my skull, forcing a pained grimace. His immediate rush of concern was met with my quick dismissal of it as a mere headache. Of course, the telltale shimmer of a system window materialized, announcing the first training event. Its text confirmed my suspicions. This was a premium tutorial, a massive shortcut unavailable to free-to-play newbies. Understanding the transaction, I instinctively produced a small pouch heavy with gold. Flashes of my past life grinding for hours just to afford this single event filled my mind. I solemnly offered Jonah a single gold coin, formally declaring it the required training fee. He gently pushed my hand away, his expression unreadable as he clarified his role as butler, not a paid NPC. My mind did a triumphant little jig at the unexpected savings. All humor vanished as I settled into a professional runner's crouch, my focus sharpening. With a single explosive push, I shot down the track like a tiny, determined cannonball. Jonah watched my retreating form, a flicker of pity in his eyes for a child who saw a price tag on everything. This tiny vessel, I discovered, possessed a surprising wellspring of untapped physical power. 30 laps later, a glorious notification announced a month-long training efficiency buff as my reward. A towel was suddenly draped over my head as Jonah's calm voice instructed me to stop for the day. His praise for my stamina was met with my very practical explanation on its necessity for outrunning danger. He seemed to understand, listing off the classic monster-slaying and thief-chasing scenarios of this world. A world-weary sigh escaped him before he announced the next item on the agenda, weapons practice. We stood before a magnificent rack of gleaming steel, where he simply told me to choose my preferred instrument. My hand unhesitatingly closed around the hilt of a short sword, perfectly weighted for my size. One weapon was never enough for a true gamer, so I also slung a finely crafted bow over my shoulder. I proudly presented him my holy trinity of grinding, a sword for close combat, a bow for range, and a sparkling magic wand. He began to correct me about the club, but I was already admiring its flawless craftsmanship. Jonah's eyes widened as he questioned my familiarity with magical artifacts. My mind flashed back to 1,000 virtual raids, this very wand a treasured drop. I simply beamed, soaking in his apparent astonishment at my prodigious talent. His pleasant demeanor shattered, his hand clamping down on my shoulder with sudden intensity. A sharp question about my past was met with my flustered denial of any street urchin history. His grip tightened, his gaze piercing as he demanded to know where I learned such skills. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, explaining his grave misunderstanding about my experience. My past life's grind for in-game currency through shady virtual jobs was the real culprit. He warned me of the perils of unsanctioned magic, his voice a low growl. Desperately, I fabricated a backstory about attending the prestigious Royal Academy, a classic RPG trope. His hold finally loosened, a flicker of belief crossing his stern features. An unsettling glint appeared in his eyes as he announced an urgent errand. He instructed me to continue training before disappearing into thin air. Standing alone in the vast training ground, I was left utterly dumbfounded by the turn of events. My first thought was a silent prayer for whichever unlucky NPC he was about to interrogate. A bitter memory of being scammed by a back-alley mage made me reconsider my sympathy. Far away, Jonah sat illuminated by a single candle, penning a detailed report. The document's header, Progress Report, was followed by a meticulous account of my day. His signature revealed Jonah Wehyumhai was merely an alias for a man with a forgotten name. A brief shadow of a more violent past crossed his face before he refocused on the task. He noted with professional admiration that his master had indeed discovered a rare gem. My physical prowess and innate combat sense were, he wrote, far beyond any reasonable expectation. He continued writing, his quill scratching rhythmically against the fine parchment. However, the report took a turn when describing my utterly bizarre personal habits. An entry detailed the incident of finding me hiding inside the estate's grandfather clock. Another described my attempt to scale the dining hall's crystal chandelier like a mountain. He paused to recall my nonsensical explanation for taking shelter within an empty wine barrel. The sheer ferocity with which I consumed my stat-boosting meals was also duly noted. A sigh of pure exasperation escaped him as he relived the chaotic memories. His final notation concerned my apparent amnesia regarding the very contract that brought me here. A deep line of concern creased his brow as he sealed the letter with wax. Abruptly, his hand shot out, grasping the hilt of a sheathed sword resting against his desk. He rose to his feet, a grim premonition settling over him like a shroud. A single bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. His instincts were screaming. Meanwhile, I was creeping through a darkened corridor, a mischievous glint in my eye. His distant, panicked call of my name went completely unheard. I vaulted over a garden wall, landing silently on the cobblestone streets of the moonlit town. From a rooftop high above, Jonah watched my tiny figure with utter bewilderment. My voice was a low whisper as I scanned a grimy alley, searching for a hidden quest objective. A faint luminescence on the ground beckoned, and I triumphantly snatched my prize. He merely saw a child fascinated by a particularly shiny pebble. Then, to his absolute horror, I popped the glowing object directly into my mouth. Every muscle in the stoic butler's body went rigid with profound shock. This unprecedented event absolutely had to be documented in his next report. His latest conclusion was that the young lady possessed a truly alarming set of eccentricities. In a flash, he was kneeling before me, his hands gently framing my face in panic. An urgent plea to expel the foreign object immediately escaped his lips. Meanwhile, a translucent window only I could see confirmed a successful stat boost. These rare items were fleeting opportunities, disappearing if not consumed instantly. His frantic questions about my rock-eating habits were met with a sly, secretive smile. It dawned on me that I probably looked like a feral child with a strange nocturnal diet. A brilliant, if utterly ridiculous excuse began to formulate in my mind. With wide, teary eyes, I confessed it was a desperate measure for my very survival. My dramatic declaration left him utterly speechless and frozen in place. His mind jumped to a heartbreakingly wrong conclusion. I was secretly starving. He earnestly vowed to double my portions, a promise that made me cheer internally. A desperate request followed, begging me to never resort to eating stones again. Of course, I solemnly agreed while already planning my next midnight mineral snack. Our bizarre misunderstanding temporarily settled, we began the walk back to the estate. My abysmal stealth stat clearly needed some serious grinding to avoid future encounters. Jonah watched my retreating back, convinced my oddities were a cry for specialized help. For my own social well-being, he resolved to hire a tutor in the arts of subtlety. Sunlight streamed into the dining hall the next morning, but something felt terribly off. A profound lethargy had settled deep into my bones, making my limbs tremble with weakness. Lifting my fork towards a plate of pasta felt like an impossibly strenuous task. My hand suddenly spasmed, driving the utensil straight through the porcelain plate. I could only stare at the shattered dish, my mind a complete and utter blank. Jonah was instantly by my side, his voice laced with genuine concern for my well-being. Perhaps my strength stat had skyrocketed, turning me into a tiny, muscle-bound warrior. A nearby reflection, however, only showed the same fragile, waifish girl. He interpreted my lack of control as a sign of extreme, debilitating frailty. My gamer instinct screamed that this body had a death-by-laziness debuff. Seeing my pathetic struggle, he decided immediate intervention was absolutely necessary. My jaw dropped when he gently took the new fork from my trembling hand. He carefully twirled a perfect bite of pasta, lifting it towards my mouth. His quiet encouragement to open my mouth was both mortifying and surprisingly sweet. I decided to lean into the delicate maiden role and graciously accept his help. Just as he offered another bite, a shadow fell over our little scene. An unfamiliar woman in pristine formal attire addressed me by a name I did not recognize. This new maid announced her name was, of all things, Leaf Life. My brain simply short-circuited as Jonah asked if I was feeling all right. Seriously, was I the only one in this world without a ridiculously themed name? Waving it off as nothing, I let him continue the very important task of feeding me. Her gaze, however, remained fixed on us, cold and unnervingly sharp. Within the training hall later, her silent appearance nearly made me jump out of my skin. Both she and Jonah stood together, their combined scrutiny feeling like a high-level boss encounter. He questioned if she'd revealed her purpose, but she merely claimed to be my new secret bodyguard. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, realizing my intuition had already pierced her disguise. Her true name, she confessed, was Reaped Life, a title bestowed by their mysterious master. A brief memory flashed through her eyes of a small orphaned girl being offered a hand in the darkness. To be reaped was to be saved, but it also meant she was the one who culled his enemies. She seemed genuinely stunned that a child could perceive the lethal aura she kept so carefully hidden. One lucky guess, she informed Jonah, would not be enough to complete her evaluation of me. He simply deferred to her judgment, granting her full authority over the final decision. Polishing his monocle, Jonah offered a knowing smirk that she completely missed. She then dared to question why a man of his infamous skills was relegated to butler duty. Her voice dropped low as she mentioned a disastrous incident involving the last young lady. Faster than I could track, his gloved hand shot out and silenced her by seizing her jaw. His voice turned to ice as he warned her to remember her designated role. With a glare that promised retribution, he commanded her to focus her attention on me alone. The dangerous woman immediately recoiled, stammering a swift and terrified apology. Oblivious to the deadly undercurrent, I piped up to ask when my training was scheduled to begin. Jonah instructed her pointedly not to interfere with my established practice regimen. Turning on his heel, he left me alone in the vast hall with my would-be assassin. Her thoughts were clear on her face. The butler was coddling his charge far too much. She knew better than anyone that their organization had little patience for failure. That evening, the new maid slipped into my chambers, expecting to find me sleeping. A glowing system window declared "Stealth Mission Failed" above my hiding spot in a laundry basket. This new NPC was definitely an annoyance, but perhaps she could be a useful grinding tool. Outsmarting this elite assassin was clearly the fastest way to level up my abysmal stealth stat. Lately, however, surviving the butler's experimental cooking had become the real daily quest. My complaint about the food's bizarre metallic taste earned an immediate, flustered apology from Jonah. He reached for the plate, a look of genuine confusion on his face as if he couldn't recall the recipe. Yet I stopped his hand, insisting I should eat the meal he had worked so hard to prepare. My simple gesture of consideration seemed to stun him into absolute silence. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why he was suddenly looking at me with such a complex expression. Then a series of pop-up windows joyfully announced my poison-resistant skill had just leveled up. Across the room, Jonah and the maid exchanged a quiet, conspiratorial glance. Reaped Life then approached with a small smile, offering a sweet candy to cleanse my palate. Happily, I accept the candy, immediately receiving an offer for a second one. A promise of freshly baked cookies for the afternoon only sweetens the deal. My gamer instincts tingled at the thought of all these delicious new items. She had no idea her generosity was simply helping me complete my collection achievements. Elsewhere, her report to Jonah labeled my talent as nothing short of monstrous. She confessed her shock at my rapid adaptation to her subtle poison regimen. Apparently, my willingness to consume the tainted meal proved I was no ordinary child. Jonah's mind immediately jumped to a grim conclusion about my former life on the streets. His face hardened with the suspicion that a rival faction was making a move in the city. No one, he vowed internally, would dare to target the family's new young lady. He tasked the maid with a dual mission: protect me and investigate the city's underbelly. His final command was a single, chilling whisper to eliminate any and all threats. Beneath the cloak of twilight, their deadly operation was set into motion. Unaware of the drama, I was gearing up for a secret nighttime quest of my own. For once, the mansion's suffocating surveillance seemed to be completely offline. This golden opportunity for some solo grinding was simply too good to pass up. These NPCs had clearly underestimated the ambition of a top-tier player. I slipped into the darkened city streets, searching for a high-yield random encounter. Yet the scene I stumbled upon in a narrow alleyway froze me in my tracks. Devastation painted the entire area, the clear aftermath of a one-sided conflict. Picking my way through the wreckage, I was stunned by the sheer scale of the chaos. Then my gaze fell upon an unbelievable jackpot, a crate overflowing with gold bars. Pocketing the epic loot, I realized this was not a simple robbery. A sudden dread washed over me. This was not a scripted event I recognized. My gut screamed that this was a high-level zone, forcing a tactical retreat. Returning to the estate, I found it bathed in an unnervingly silent moonlight. Relief washed over me as I finally crept back to the safety of my own room. Swinging the door open, however, revealed a terrifyingly calm figure waiting inside. Leaf, the new maid, greeted me with an unnervingly serene smile. A quiet question about my late-night excursion caught me completely off guard. She drew closer, her placid expression revealing absolutely nothing. Her whispered observation about the scent of blood sent a paralyzing chill down my spine. My stammered excuses only seemed to deepen the unsettling curve of her lips. She led me towards my bed with a gentle touch that hid an unbreakable strength. Sleep refused to come as a profound sense of unease kept me wide awake. Without a sound, Leaf appeared beside my bed, a single candle casting dancing shadows. Calmly, she insisted it was only a bad dream, her voice a soothing balm. A soft hand covered my eyes as she promised to watch over me until morning. An unnatural weariness began to claim me, the candle's smoke strangely sweet. Drifting into darkness, my last thought was to question if any of it had been real. A shrewd glint illuminated Leaf's eyes as she watched me sleep.
She finally understood Jonah's assessment of my surprising potential.
This little girl was not just a rogue, but a natural-born shadow. A devious smile crept across her face. My real training would begin now. One grueling month later, a system notification heralded the end of my boot camp. My temporary stat buffs vanished, leaving behind the pure gains of my labor. A new level of power coursed through me, begging to be tested. This time, no one at the academy would dare underestimate me. That legendary institution was a gathering place for the world's future legends. Jonah began explaining the entrance exam, unaware I had the entire quest memorized. Past playthroughs flashed through my mind, full of desperate grinding for tuition fees. He unfurled a map displaying the locations of 3 distinct examiners. His question of which path I would take was purely a formality. My finger landed decisively on the high-level senior examiner's location. Both Jonah and Leaf stared, their expressions a mixture of shock and intrigue. Worry creased his brow as he questioned my bold choice. Only a rookie would waste their time on the easy-mode examiners. I knew that the S-tier admission ticket was only dropped by the final boss. Jonah grimly announced the trial would take place at the Garden of the Gods. My recent training in combat and stealth had prepared me for any challenge. A sharp reminder followed that my magic skills were sealed until enrollment. A waiting carriage confirmed my suspicion that this quest trigger was different from the game's. Any player character found on that divine mountain would be a top-tier threat. Jonah eyed my single small travel bag with a hint of concern. I quickly assured him it contained no embarrassing items like teddy bears. Leaf, however, praised my practical choices with an approving nod. Jonah's expression grew serious as he announced it was time for our departure. His voice called my name one last time as I beamed, ready for adventure. Our grand carriage lurched forward, beginning the long trek to the mountains. I sighed dramatically, lamenting the lack of a fast travel option in this reality. Leaf's gentle voice broke my reverie, asking if this rest stop was acceptable. My bewildered gaze followed Jonah's gesture towards a strange, boxy building. A photograph, he explained, was needed to document my progress for the Duke. A cold sweat formed on my brow. I knew cameras in this world cost a fortune. This was an outrageous waste of gold when a simple painted portrait would suffice. Jonah's eyes suddenly lit up with an idea that I knew I would immediately regret. Suddenly, he produced an explosion of pink frills in the shape of a dress. My soul visibly left my body at the sight of the horrifyingly girly attire. His pleading look for me to wear it just this once was tragically effective. An exasperated sigh escaped me as I tapped a newly acquired matching pink shoe. This frilly pink debuff was seriously tanking my charisma stat. We stepped inside a studio that smelled of flash powder and old memories. A wizened man behind a massive, boxy camera turned to greet us. The casual question about a family portrait made my soul want to exit my body again. Jonah, ever the stoic, simply requested the swiftest possible procedure. Somehow, the resulting photograph depicted me as a miniature monarch on a velvet throne. Liberated from the pink prison, my comfortable adventuring gear felt like a legendary armor set. Never had a side quest felt so utterly mortifying. Back in the carriage, a flamboyant bard materialized from nowhere, lute in hand. He grandly dedicated his next piece to the rose-cheeked cherub in the corner. My brain short-circuited at being the target of this random NPC's attention. With a dramatic flourish, he announced the truly unsettling title, The Maiden of Ivory Skin. One of his eyes glinted with an unnatural golden light that was not a default character design. Our trio's collective killing intent dropped the carriage's temperature by several degrees. Mercifully, the vehicle shuddered to a halt before anyone committed a crime. Before us lay the Garden of the Gods, swarming with an absolute legion of players. So many other candidates were here to contest the server's top spot. That same minstrel with the creepy eye had somehow teleported directly behind me. I questioned his presence, noting he was far past the level cap for this starting zone. Leaning in conspiratorially, he claimed to be a simple, unobtrusive spectator. His whisper then dropped lower as he declared himself my personal cheering section. Behind me, the glares from my two party members could have melted steel. Swift motion preceded the bard's sudden, sharp recoil. Sporting a fresh bruise, the minstrel merely offered a cheerful vow to see me inside. Then he scampered away with theatrical flair, wishing me a glorious victory. Admittedly, the guy wasn't a boring encounter, earning a sharp look from Leaf. My gaze followed Leaf as she began to turn away from our group. She informed Jonah of a personal errand that required her immediate attention. Sudden worry made me ask if we couldn't just keep the party together. Waving off my concern, she muttered something about a lucky guy before striding away. Jonah's stern voice suddenly cut through my thoughts, halting my next step. A firm lecture followed on the dangers of engaging with strange, wandering minstrels. My pouty denial was immediately shot down by Leaf's parting shot about my generous nature. Red-faced, I sputtered, completely baffled by the accusation. His threat to restrict my social interactions felt like a totally unfair status effect. Careless words about him not being my keeper forever slipped past my lips. Seeing the sudden darkness in his eyes made me wish I could reload a previous save. Finally reaching the registration area, we were met by a queue of truly epic proportions. An official-looking sign confirmed this was, in fact, the endless line for the entrance exam. Leaf reappeared to press a numbered ticket into my hand, sealing our long, tedious wait. Jonah's kind offer to wait a week was immediately rejected. No self-respecting gamer would ever waste that much time being idle. A brilliant game-breaking idea suddenly sparked behind my eyes. Purposefully, I strode through the sea of bored players with a small wooden table. My impromptu arm wrestling challenge was declared with the slam of the table. For an entry fee, challengers would have to wager their precious queue ticket. Skeptical murmurs rippled through the crowd at the sight of their diminutive challenger. Then, a wave of hopefuls surged forward, creating a chaotic mob around my station. Blue light materialized as a system window officially sanctioned my queue jumping tournament. Its text helpfully noted this little game was child's play compared to the real exam. My wicked grin widened at the thought of all the reputation points I was about to farm. One mountain of a man stepped forward, his expression oozing with overconfidence. His condescending gaze swept over me as he prepared to face his tiny opponent. My small hand was completely engulfed by his as we locked our grips. Almost before the match began, his knuckles were firmly pinned to the wood. He could only stare at his defeated arm in absolute shell-shocked disbelief. Plucking the ticket from his limp grasp, I pocketed my first prize. A collective gasp was the only sound from the now silent audience. Flashing a smug little smile, I beckoned for the next fool to try their luck. Challenger after challenger fell in a rapid-fire montage of crushing defeats. Another hand slammed down as I triumphantly called out for more competition. The sight of a hulking warrior openly weeping drew a fresh wave of astonishment. Tapping my fingers impatiently, I wondered aloud if this was the best they had to offer. Behind me, Jonah and Leaf exchanged looks of pure, unadulterated pride. A helpful pop-up graph illustrated the massive benefits of early game stat grinding. Memories of my grueling swordsmanship regimen flashed through my mind. All those hours spent on archery and martial arts had clearly paid off. Even my silly little title, Sandbag Smasher, contributed to this overwhelming power. Beaming with triumph, I declared my strength stat was an unbelievable 29. Whispers of illegal mana enhancement were ignored. This was pure build optimization. A shifty-looking man in the crowd began taking wagers on the outcome of my next match. He cunningly stacked the odds against me, promising a massive payout for my defeat. Close up, the pile of glittering gold coins grew to a truly tempting size. Our eyes met for a moment, and he had the nerve to call me his lucky charm. My sweetest, most innocent smile appeared as I suggested a 50-50 split of his profits. His dismissive smirk proved he had no idea what kind of monster he was dealing with. Instantly, my angelic face twisted into a demonic glare as I mentioned illegal gambling policies. All the color drained from his face as the gravity of his situation finally dawned on him. After his hasty apology, I shot a cheeky victory sign towards my amused guardians. Most of the crowd had dispersed, but a single dark figure remained, watching from the shadows. A strange prickle on my neck sent my gaze scanning the thinning crowd. An unexpected system notification announced the interest of a mysterious observer. Dismissing the alert with a casual wave, I demanded my next opponent step forward. By the following morning, my enthusiasm had dissolved into pure, unadulterated boredom. Jonah theorized my overwhelming power had simply terrified away any potential competition. Letting out a dramatic huff, I kicked a stray pebble, frustrated by the lack of action. Then, a sudden commotion parted the crowd to reveal a new arrival. Emerging from the throng was a mountain of a man with a grin that split his face in two. His booming voice cheerfully asked if the tiny champion was ready for a real match. Holding out a gleaming gold coin, he made his offer, but I dramatically covered my ears. I ignored the crowd's whispers about me being some kind of freak of nature. Their wild guesses about my strength stat hitting 40 were starting to get on my nerves. Protective as ever, Jonah stepped between us, citing the absurd difference in our sizes. The big man just chuckled, clearly more impressed than intimidated by my reputation. Trying a different tactic, Jonah desperately offered to wager a hefty sum of gold instead. For a moment, the giant actually seemed to contemplate the ridiculous proposal. He then completely surprised us by turning on his heel and striding away. We watched in confusion as he approached another man, clapping him on the shoulder. That man, utterly bewildered, simply handed over a single shiny coin. With stunning nimbleness, the behemoth began rolling the coin across his knuckles. Unbelievably, he wasn't a challenger at all, just a street magician giving a lesson. Close up, the gold piece danced effortlessly over his massive, calloused fingers. Meanwhile, his clumsy pupil let out a groan of pure frustration. Watching them, a spark of pure, unadulterated genius suddenly ignited in my mind. Scampering over to another bystander, I proposed an entirely new kind of wager. My smirk returned full force as I offered a bet that relied on luck, not brawn.